purpose in life is to make my life easier. So, Mrs. Cherico.
Okay. Are you going to do like the 3, 2, 1?
It's on.
It's on now.
It's on.
My name's Diane Cherico. I was appointed to the board in June of last year to take over Phil Keogh's place to finish his term. I chose to run to be elected in real time to continue learning. This has been a very large learning curve for me, and I have enjoyed my time so far, and I really want to continue to do what I can to help provide the best education that we can give for the Pottsgrove students in a fiscally responsible way.
Okay, Mr. Fulmer.
Hi, my name's Scott Fulmer. I'm with the, been on the board since 2001, and the reason I'm running for re-election is it's just something that I really enjoy doing. I love giving my time back to the community that I live in. The school district has provided my two daughters with an excellent education. My one has graduated from college, my other one is in college, and it's just something that I really enjoy doing. There's some things that I'd like to finish on my time on the board, and I'll end it with that.
Nancy Landes. I have 3 students that have gone through the district, one who's still in the district, she's an 11th grader, one that's in college, and one that is not in school at the moment. I'm in year 8 of my time on the board, and I found it to be very interesting, very educational time period. I would like to continue to be able to give back to the community and to continue with the work that we've been doing, moving the school district in a more positive direction. It is a learning curve, and I kind of felt like in the very beginning, you know, sometimes it's a bit overwhelming because it's a big job. And once you start to learn more about it, you realize, you know, it really is very beneficial both personally and to the district, and I think it's something that I would like to be able to continue to do.
Okay, Mr. Neiffer.
Hi there, I'm Mike Neiffer. I joined the board back in 2001 with Mr. Fulmer. I have 3 daughters. One has already graduated from the district, and 2 of them are coming up through the district. When Scott and I came on the board 12 years ago, the situation was pretty bleak here in the district, and we thought that we could make a change for the better, and we feel that we have made positive impacts over the last 12 years. The work's not done yet, and that's why I'm running for re-election, is that we still have work to do. We still need to continue to move Pottsgrove forward. That's our tagline. And it's not just a tagline, it's really what we believe is we're going to get hit with curveballs as a school district. You know that from being over here at Pottstown. You have to get creative in the ways that you continue to move forward. And we feel that we've done that, and we'd like to continue that for the next 4 years.
Okay. Well, let's talk about something that everyone's been talking about lately, the high school, since it's fresh on everybody's mind. And I don't know too many incumbents who lay a $30 million bill in front of the voters when they're running for re-election, but that's what you guys have decided to do, and you seem to be getting a pretty positive response. What's the most important criteria for you guys in terms of whether you go ahead and what you decide to go ahead with the high school, and what maybe you leave out, if anything? Who wants to start with that? Mrs. Landes, you look like you have something to say.
Well, all of it's actually very important. I think you know, there's much been made about the music program growing, and we certainly need more space for that. I think as a board, we've always felt very strongly that the arts are a part of the academics. They're not just another piece of school. It is very much a part of the academics. So I think it's important that we do provide enough space for that to continue to grow. Obviously, the academics themselves, the labs, we definitely need to get all of those up to date. It's really hard to look at the project and see anything that doesn't need to be done. I think at this point in time, we're in a really unique position, really due to planning, financial planning and foresight, both by the board and by our business manager, to allow us to do this without having an additional impact on the taxpayers. So between the interest rates being so low and some foresight and planning, and knowing that this was a project, I mean, I know since I came on the board 8 years ago, the project of the high school has been something that has been in the minds that it's going to be time for the high school to get done when we get there. You know, that's something that's always been in the plan. So
It has been the backstory for a while. Mr. Katzenmoyer will give his presentation, and then he'll say, and remember, we have the high school.
Yes.
still needs to be
Yes.
looked at.
Yeah, so some have said, oh, well, why haven't you done anything sooner? Well, it wasn't time yet. Now it's time to start looking at it, so.
Right. Anybody else have any thoughts on the subject of the high school?
I asked last night how many additional new classroom instruction spaces we'll be getting with the renovation. The architect told me 7 additional classrooms. We need the classrooms. We need to modernize the building and move forward with an education in today's world. I also asked about the questions as the capacity of the gym. I said, if we decide to go forward with the gym, I want it built big enough that it's going to hold the entire student body, not why would we build it for 900 kids and we have 991 now. It just doesn't make sense. But in the long run, it's all about the educational space. The music programs are growing. That, to me, is amazing as districts, surrounding districts, are looking to eliminate those programs or cut the programs. Pottsgrove is flourishing. So I think that's something that this board can be proud of.
Absolutely. Mr. Cherico, do you have anything you want to say about that? Or has it all been said?
Well, mostly, but I don't have a background in architecture or building or anything like that, except for our house that was built 20 years ago. And of course, there are so many things that I would do differently 20 years later. And so it's kind of interesting to look at the high school, and my 2 children have graduated, one in 08 and one just last year. And, everything worked well for them. But when the architects presented their the feasibility study, and you can see, well, if you move this here and then move this here, it's incredible what can really be done to make it better just by expanding and
Moving things around.
yeah, and some layperson like me, that was just quite an eye-opening experience, I guess.
Yeah. It is very more interwoven, I think, than any other building project that I've seen in just about any other district, and has become evident with the discussion about the gyms.
Exactly.
You pull one thread, and all this other stuff starts to react as a result.
I mean, and even with Mike last night saying, just by rotating the gym, that was going to open up a whole new area of discussion.
I believe not only did someone call him a genius for that suggestion, but I believe Mr. Rabinowitz actually said that he agreed with
Yeah.
it.
He did.
A monumental
He did.
moment.
Something that you said at the beginning, how does an incumbent that's running for re-election throw a $30 million renovation project out at the public literally a month and a half before the election? And the simple answer to that is that's not what we're about. It's not about avoiding something so that you get reelected. We've had a community that's backed us, some of us, for the last 12 years. And they supported us through investing in a renovation at Lower, which was much needed. And then we moved on to the Votech Center down in Limerick, and they supported that overwhelmingly. And more recently, we did Ringing Rocks. The high school wasn't neglected. It was just the one that didn't need the most work at the time. And being fiscally sound, you can't do all those projects at one time. The high school was always the next thing. When we started talking about it really more in earnest last summer, although Mr. Katzenmoyer has been talking about it for a couple of years, that started to set the wheels in motion, and we kind of knew what we were looking at. Does an incumbent want to have a $30 million project right before an election? Probably ones that are getting paid, but we're volunteers. And it's not about getting elected by ignoring a big project. It's what's needed. It's what's needed right now. You've been out at the meetings. At least the people who are coming out to the meetings are very much in support of it. They may differ on what's the most important aspect of it, but I think everybody, after going through the tour, realized that, yeah, it is time and we need to do this. So whether we win re-election or not, the high school needs to get a renovation. We need to update it. We need to upgrade some of the educational things. And as long as the things that we're looking at in that project are improving educational value, then why wouldn't you do it? And that's what we're here for.
Well, as evidenced by the fact that your opponents don't seem to be opposed to very much of the, if they thought it was a big deal, they might jump on it, but
Well,
it seems like they
other
disagree.
than not wanting to send their one child to the school, you know,
They
they've
finish
now
retracting
realized that the public is behind it, so now they're behind it.
Right. You've talked about moving Pottsgrove forward as being your tagline. What does the district need to do better?
Who wants to take that one first?
Yeah,
Where to start?
big lump on the table. Well, why don't we ask the school board president to answer that?
Oh, thank you.
Not me this time.
Yeah, thanks for that. Well, we've had a lot of changes in the last year. First of all, Mr. Neiffer resigned as president. I took over. And just as Nancy and Diane said, it's a tremendous learning curve, and it's so much responsibility. And I'm thankful that I have the other board members to lean on. We changed superintendents. We went to the centers. Now we're looking at a renovation project. I think the most important thing we need to do in moving forward is we need to continue to educate our teachers. And by that I mean giving them the instruction that they need on how to teach these new methods that the state is dictating to us how to teach.
The Common Core.
Yes. The teachers are our greatest resource other than our children, and I think that is, we need to keep moving forward with that staff development. We added a lot of staff development this year, you know, to help the teachers out. We passed a new math curriculum last night, so there's going to be a lot of training and teaching with that. So I think the teachers is our biggest thing. That's my opinion.
And I would have to agree, I think, because there are so many changes in education in general. I mean, you know, between the testing, I mean, even the Act 1, the No Child Left Behind, all of those things have greatly changed the way education is perceived and the way it's taught. And it continues to change, and I think change is so difficult. It's difficult for teachers that have been teaching for a long time to have to change their methods and do it a different way. And they're responding, you know, that we are providing them with the support that they need, and we need to continue to do that. And I think the expectations have to continue to change, and as our population changes, we have to be able to respond to that as well.
I think also to remember that we're all working towards that common goal of providing the best education for those students so that they can go out and make us proud and be upstanding citizens and hopefully find good jobs.
Right. Well, presumably, and Mrs. Landes, you mentioned NCLB and all that sort of stuff, and test scores, like them or not, are a big part of the picture these days. And your opponents have made the case that Pottsgrove's test scores are not what we might hope. They have a fairly extensive examination of that on their website, looking at economic models. How do you respond to the idea, if you agree with it, that Pottsgrove's test scores are not where they should be? What needs to happen? Or maybe a better way to ask that question is, are you satisfied with where the test scores are?
No, we're not satisfied.
Not at all.
No. I think we need to continue putting the things that we have in place, the teacher training and so forth. We have to continue moving forward with that. We have to recognize some of the challenges that we have. We have a population that tends to be a bit transient, so sometimes we don't get our students till later in their educational years. So we have to do some different things and figure out different ways to approach those students that come to us later in their education, because they're being tested and they haven't had the opportunity to go through our educational system. So a lot of the wonderful things that we're putting in place in the younger grades, they're not getting to benefit from that if they don't come until 9th, 10th, 11th grade, or even, you know, the later middle school years. So we have to figure out a good way to kind of help those students that we're not getting until the end, and recognize that, you know, it will continue to be a challenge to have our scores where we want them to be with some of the challenges that we face.
Mr. Neiffer?
Well, a lot's been made about data and what the data shows. And the data isn't going to show that you move the child from really low basic to really high basic, or really low below basic to really high below basic. And when you're dealing with a lot of children, such as Pottstown does, that are economically disadvantaged, have higher IEP rates than most of the surrounding area, you're going to have to change the way that you teach. And a lot of the data that has been thrown out there has been about 11th grade. Well, what are we looking at forward to that? If you go in and look at all the data and some of the initiatives that we've done with differentiation and initially hybrid kindergarten and then full-day kindergarten for everybody, we're starting to see some positive impacts of that in the lower grades. You're not going to go and put a Band-Aid on 11th grade and not address the 10 grades that come before it. So we took a longer approach, and this was back in the mid-2000s, right after you came on. That takes time, but we're starting to see that. And with some of this new curriculum that we're adding, and again, you cannot add it all in 1 year. It's too much for the students, it's too much for the teachers, it's too much for the parents. We're gradually introducing these things to get us going in the right direction. You know, are we happy where they're at? Of course not. Are they better than where they were? Absolutely. And one of the things that we pride ourselves on to help get those test scores up over time, and Scott, you alluded to a little bit earlier, other places are cutting staff, cutting programs. You know, we put it out on our Facebook page. You know, when Scott and I started, there was 221 teachers in the district. There's 247 now. Find another district that hasn't really grown in its population that's increased its staff by over 10%. The same can be said for support staff. So what are we doing with those people? We're getting them into those elementary classrooms to get to the students earlier. And it takes time. I use the example on the Facebook page. My youngest daughter came in, she was Title I for reading. If we didn't have that, and we didn't have those extra teachers helping, she'd probably still be in Title I. But now, a few years later, she's not only not in Title I, she's a member of the elementary school's 100 Book Club. And for someone to come from where they were to that, it's quite an accomplishment. That wouldn't have been possible, and it wouldn't have shown up on any of these tests if we weren't hiring these extra teachers and getting them the extra training that they need to be able to teach at all different levels of skill. You know, we can look at, I think it's schooldigger.com, which, let's face it, it's financed pretty much by private schools and charter schools, so it's got a bent to it. Or you can look at all the data that PDE puts out there, and you can look at all the grades. So yeah, we do have to improve, but we do like the traction that we're finally starting to get. It's just going to take some more time.
Okay, anyone else want to weigh in on that? No? Okay.
I just have to add to it too, you know, although the scores may not always show it, I mean, we have some very high achieving students. We have lots of kids that do quite well, and sometimes that's not reflected when you're just looking at the averages, so.
I wanted to ask in particular, Scott and Mike, a question because I'm old enough that I was around when you guys first got on the board.
Is that a good thing?
They were good days. They were fun days.
No comment. And as I recall, one of the prime motivators for you guys getting involved was the mold situation at Lower Pottsgrove. You were unhappy with the way that the administration and the board at the time was dealing with what you felt was a crucial situation. Stop me if I'm mischaracterizing how you felt about it. And you didn't feel like you were getting the right or enough information. Is that roughly accurate?
Somewhat. I know myself, I ran in 1999 because I saw what the taxpayer group was going to do to our district. I ran with two other gentlemen. I wasn't successful, but I kept coming to meetings. I kept getting more involved in the district. I was out probably 4 nights a week. I missed time from my family, but I met Mr. Neiffer, we met 2 other people that we ran, and we eventually all got on the board, and we got there. But I was not happy with the mold situation lower, but that wasn't what got me initially involved with the school.
Okay.
It was before that.
What I'm leading into here is now 12 years later, you guys are facing a challenge from a group of people who are unhappy with the way that the administration and the board dealt with an issue that they felt was very important, which was the centers. And I'm just curious how your perspective has changed being on the inside looking out to when you first got involved and you didn't like what you thought was happening and you were on the outside looking in.
You want to go first?
Sure. The thing with the centers is that was probably the third hardest vote that I ever had to make, being on the board. The other two were student-related issues. And I sought teachers' input. They called my home. No one knows who those teachers were because I told them that confidentiality remained. My wife doesn't even know who they were. They're the ones that are going to be providing the education.
Sure.
I spoke with teachers from Pottsgrove. I spoke with teachers from not Pottsgrove, retired teachers, teachers that are just graduating out of college. They all said the centers would provide a better learning environment. All-day kindergarten was the way to go. And since I've been on the board, I've never, how can I say this right? I've never put my kids' needs before the other kids of the district. And I felt that this was the best overall move for every single student in the entire Pottsgrove district, not just the selected field.
Right.
I'll be honest with you. Back in 2001, I was very angry. My oldest child was at Lower Pottsgrove Elementary School. There's a big difference between the two issues, though. Back in 2001, it was health and safety. And it was health and safety for every student, teacher, and administrator that was in that building every day. And the data that we like to throw around showed a lot of evidence that it was a very unhealthy place. So we ran for board. The difference now is, and the perspective I have on it, the health and safety back then really didn't have anything to do in the eyes of the board at the time of providing education. It was, we don't want to do this because we want to save money. Now, you move ahead to last year. One of the things that we said from the beginning, we're charged with educating every student. And we talk about test scores, and we talk about where we want to get to. It was another one of the initiatives that we were undertaking to move the district forward educationally. Did it have an impact on my child like the one in 01? Not as much, but I do have a daughter at Lower this year. But if you start to look at it, some of the same individuals that want to run us out of town right now are the same individuals that had no problem raising taxes to build Ringing Rocks. And it's not about the students that go there now, it's about the students that will always go there. Scott alluded to it just now. It was probably in our second or third year, but for 4 straight years, because of budgetary concerns, there was a need either at West or Ringing Rocks, because both of our children went to Lower, there was a need for an extra elementary teacher at one of those schools, and there was one needed at Lower. We can only have one. And for 4 years in a row, we voted for the teacher in the other building, thus putting our own children in a larger class size. That's what being on the board is about. Forgetting your dad or your mom hat, your parent hat, and saying, what's best for the district? Now, we're being accused of being a 9-0 board on the centers and that we had made up our mind ahead of time. No, nothing could be further from the truth. But again, when we take off our parent hats and we look at the district as a whole, remember, no child left behind. So you have to look at every child. What's best for the district? We felt with the evidence that was there at the time, and that is still there, that centers complements the other initiatives that we're doing to move the district forward, and so we voted accordingly. People want to threaten us for that. That kind of comes with the territory of being on the board. You take the personal shots and everything. But at the end of the day, we had to look at what wasn't best for our child. And some of us don't even have children that were being impacted by it. So you have to look at what's the impact for the district today, tomorrow, 10 years from now. That's why we voted the way we did. So circumstances, to me, from a perspective standpoint, very different. One was health and safety, and the other one was about education. And when it comes down to education, every time there's been a vote involving these people that I'm sitting here with, they have voted what they felt was best for the district and not their own family.
Okay. While we're on the subject of centers, Mrs. Landes, I don't know if you want to weigh in on that or not, what your thinking was behind supporting?
Behind voting for the centers?
Yes.
Okay, don't get me started, Don.
There's only so much capacity in the recorder.
So I was actually on a committee years ago, probably about 14 years ago, where we looked at the demographics and we looked at different configurations and so forth, and that center's concept was one of the ones that we looked at. So when we started talking about it again, it was something that I was very familiar with, because at the time I found it to make a lot of sense, you know, the research and so forth. And it was, we didn't have the constrictions that we have now, okay? So we were able to look at a lot of different things, and there just really wasn't the appetite to move forward with it at that point in time. So we didn't, you know, we went with the more traditional and just moved kids around. But I was very familiar with the concept and the pros and cons of it when we started off. So having that kind of behind me and then looking at it again, now I didn't have children in it that would be affected this time. First time around I did. But still, I brought all those feelings with me again and looked at it, and the benefits, I think, are just greatly outweigh what the cons would be.
Right. And Mrs. Cherico, you weren't on the board, so you didn't cast a vote on that.
I did not.
So my question for you about that is, what was your perception of the way that it was handled as a member of the community? Did you feel that that the board and the district had explained its position well enough to people? I mean, there were a lot of angry folks there. And I'm curious, as you were an outsider at the time,
Right,
what you
right.
thought about it.
I know that they held meetings leading up to, and as with anything, it takes a lot to get people to take notice and think all of a sudden, you know, this is gonna affect me. So, you know, I better all of a sudden, you know, get to it and put my input in there.
Often nothing else gets them interested.
Right. So what I knew was what I read in the paper.
Oh, you poor thing.
So yeah, so
That's stellar reporting by them.
exactly. You know, so I guess I can't honestly state much of what the board's, you know, what my feelings are for the board's perspective was, because I wasn't at any of those meetings at that point, because last year my youngest child was getting ready to graduate, so
Right.
the elementary issue wasn't high on my priority list at that point.
Well,
So-
but did you have a sense that you thought that, well, first of all, I don't know how you feel about centers specifically, or whether you gave it any thought at the time. I'm curious, as someone who was outside it, and at the time you had no idea that you were going to be on the board soon.
Right.
What was your impression of the way that it was handled?
Well, like I said, they had meetings that the public could attend, and apparently they weren't really well attended until right up to the end, when it looked like
That's about
it was,
right, too.
Yeah, when it was going to.
Like December on it.
Yeah, you know,
It got
kind of
busy.
like caught fire, and you know, so I'm sure that those people were wishing, gee, you know, maybe we should have showed more interest earlier on.
Right.
I don't know what else the board could have done to make it more open and more community friendly.
Here's the thing, Evan.
Mhm.
As I said, it was a really hard decision for me. I struggled with it a lot. But I sought the information of people that are trained and educated in education. And ultimately, that's what swayed my vote, was the people that have a background in education. None of them told me, oh, this is a bad move, don't do it. They all said, it's a good move, it's the way to go. That's why I made it. It's the same reason why we're meeting with architects now to build a building.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Oh, yeah, and I think I shared this even the night that I was appointed. I certainly had a lot of sympathy for the parents that were so adamant that they didn't want their kids split up, and you know, they thought that was going to be so detrimental. But when the mold and mildew issue was going on at Lower, I can still remember the year that my younger daughter went to first grade, and my older daughter was in 5th grade. Lower Elementary started a month later than everybody else,
I remember that.
and our kids were picked
September
up.
30th.
They were bused to the middle school. My 5th grader stayed at the middle school and had class in the LGI room at in the library. My 1st grader was bused then to West Pottsgrove for 1st grade. So you have
had a taste of
instructional
disruption.
You have instructional time lost there. So that went on from the end of September till, I believe, maybe November. Gosh. And then they were brought back to lower because everything was supposed to be, the issue was supposed to have gone away. And they finished out the year, and then the next year when she started in the second grade, they were put up to the middle school. So then she had second and third grade at the middle school, half the year of her fourth grade year, and then she was put into the brand new lower, renovated Lower Pottsgrove. So, you know, talk about, yeah, talk about, you know, being uprooted and uprooted and uprooted. And she's fine.
Well, she's no more than fine.
Well,
She
yeah, I
did
mean,
quite well.
she graduated, she was second in her class, and she's doing quite well in college, and so I had a lot of sympathy, but I think that when you're given a situation, if you know that there's no way that you can change it, then you gotta push forward and make the best of it.
Nobody's saying about their children, myself included.
The process wasn't perfect,
Mhm.
and you attended those meetings. I mean, there were presentations that were done by the administration that, quite frankly, they didn't convince us strong enough, and we made them go back and redo the presentation at a future meeting. We did that on a couple of occasions. And other than the one night, I believe it was at West Pottsgrove, when there was a gentleman from up at Pottsgrove making threats in the back of the room that we had to cut off public comment, we let those meetings go and go and go and go. And I was the president at the time, and it would have been easy to do Robert's rules and say everybody gets 2 minutes, but we let people speak. And some of those meetings went 3-4 hours long. We didn't turn anybody away. So, you know, the irony of it is that there's a group running against us now, and whether they say they're against centers or not, we all know, and you know, that they were born out of the centers and the anti-centers approach. It speaks volumes to us that we made the right decision when no less than 2 months into the school year, you know, the person kind of heading up that group went on his Facebook page and acknowledged that centers was really working out well for his 2 children. And unless it's been taken off the Facebook page, although I did print it, that's still there. So nothing's going to be perfect. Change is not going to be perfect. Could we have done a better job communicating through that? You can always do a better job communicating through that.
That's enough a better job, you won't be any reason.
Yeah, and we don't want to be any reason. But that being said, you know, there's a transition, whether it's at work or it's in education. There's always going to be bumps in the road when you're going through a transition of that magnitude. We're at a point now, and you're hearing a lot of it come up at the board meetings again, where the center's decision was made over a year ago. It was implemented at the end of last August. We need to come together as a community. So whether we win or lose, we need to come together as a community and say, look, it's here. It's starting to get some traction. Let's work together and make it the best it can be.
For the
because
record,
it's the
they
children.
have said that they are not intent on reversing that decision.
Yeah, what are you going to say at this point? So,
Like Beetlejuice, you said the word Facebook 3 times now.
yes.
And I am working on a feature story about the role of Facebook and the upcoming role of it in the campaigns. I'd be curious to ask you guys what you think about it, particularly those who have run at least once before about its role. But I also think it's fair to say that I've noticed an increased back and forth even in the board meetings. And I'm curious about whether or not that's a result of the back and forth that goes on the Facebook pages. I have to say I'm very impressed with the civility of both sites for the most part. People ask questions, they get their questions answered. You know, there's always going to be a little bit of emotion wrapped up in that, but it hasn't turned into what could have been a very nasty food fight, at least so far as I've seen.
You need to go back a few months.
Well, you guys.
We didn't have a site a few months ago, for the record.
Well, but and so that's one of the points, though, is that you felt the necessity to start one, and I've noticed that all of you guys are on it. That you've talked about who you are and why you're running. You know, it's a different venue to present your point of view. It's a way that people can ask questions and that you can answer it. And I've seen you, Mike, asking the administration questions, which were posed to you on Facebook, which a year ago, as a guy who goes to a lot of board meetings, I don't think I ever would have seen before. So talk to me a little bit about what role you think it's playing in this race.
Scott and I ran 12 years ago, Facebook didn't exist.
Exactly.
The internet was sort of still of an anomaly, and most people had AOL accounts. Some people may still have AOL accounts.
My father does.
More people do than you realize.
Yeah, more people do than you realize. But so we spent an incredible amount of time at events, knocking on doors, and over 12 years, times have changed with social media. So now it's, in addition to those things, you need to incorporate things like Facebook. You need to incorporate things like email blasts and stuff like that to get your message out, because time is precious to families, and we find when we're out there knocking on doors now, there's not as many people home. So you need to figure out ways to reach them, with your message. So I think it's played a much bigger role than I had anticipated it would, to be honest with you. But it has been refreshing, and one of the things that we decided from day one, and we're the only candidates that can say this, is that our group was open from day one. Do we have some limitations there? Yeah, we do have an approval process for posts, but not comments. And fortunately we have, because some individuals have attempted to post some very inappropriate material on the site. And I use the site as an education tool for my two youngest children. So I want them to be able to go on there and see the questions that are being asked in the comments. So for those individuals, I've reached out to them and said, we're just not going to post that. Comments, no comments have ever been taken down, and to your point, people have been pretty respectful of that. There's jabs probably from both camps here and there.
Run our Facebook site for a day.
But we pride ourselves on having a thing that's informational. It's creating awareness. I think we took some hits early on because there were supposed people that weren't in the area. Unfortunately, most people from the other candidates don't understand that I grew up in Pottstown. I've spent almost my entire life here. So yeah, did I reach out to high school friends and stuff that still live in the area and have friends that live in Pottsgrove? Absolutely. The point of the site was to create awareness. So whether you lived in Phoenix, Arizona, or you lived in Pottsgrove, it was to get the message out there. We're doing our thing right now with Slim,
Yes.
And a friend of mine, he actually grew up next door to me. He took the picture of the flamingos at the Phoenix Zoo, and Slim happened to show up there, yet he wasn't on our tour. So people are getting interactive, and they're just kind of helping out. It was just something to have fun and create some additional awareness of how proud we are, and something that hasn't really been asked here yet, but the passion that these three individuals that I'm running with have for the school, because I'm not going to talk about myself here, but these three individuals, between them have close to 60 years volunteering in this district. They have a passion and dedication for this district that no one in the last 20 years running for the school board has, including the ones that are running against us now. They haven't even been here more than 5 or 6 years. You have to have grown up in this area or have spent your adult life in this area to fully understand and have that passion and dedication. And it's not just school board. It's coaching. It's the booster club. It's PTOs. It's, where were you at before you came here this evening?
Zoning board.
Zoning board for the township.
The rec board.
Helping a friend try and get elected as a judge a few years ago. It's getting involved in your community. And this can't be matched. It just can't. And I'm not sure it can be matched anywhere in the area, because there's been a lot of turnover in boards in other districts around the area. And that's something that brings a lot of energy to me. I love being around these people. I actually love being around the entire board, because while we differ on things, their focus is the children. And whether it's board or not.
Methods of the Facebook, I guess you don't have a Twitter account, but I'm curious about whether or not, thank God.
I understand another candidate has a Twitter account, and we don't have Twitter accounts.
Well, I have one, but it wasn't by choice.
You have to do that for your
That's
for your
right.
job.
But I'm curious about whether or not you think it makes you better candidates. I mean, the stuff that you're talking about now, it seems to me that that's all stuff that you can convey to the community now. You don't have to come through me. You don't have to meet people at a meet and greet. You can post that, and you can post your stories there, and anyone can find it at any point who has a computer and look at it and get that sense. So I wonder if you guys think it makes you better candidates. And, you know, not candidates in the political sense, but candidates in helping people to understand who you are and why you're running.
From that perspective, yeah, I think it makes anybody a better candidate, because you need to find ways to communicate with the public.
Right.
So yeah, I do think it makes you a better candidate, because you're finding alternate ways to reach out to the voters. And that being said, though, having somebody sit across from you and ask you a question, and you can't do this and put your head down and talk to the microphone or anything like that, but you actually address the question. Maybe I'm old
There's
school.
still nothing better than.
There's nothing better than
face-to-face
someone asking you a
conversation.
question,
Right.
whether it's at a board meeting or in aisle 7 up at Giant, and asking you a question and you taking the time to answer it.
So you don't want this to replace it, but it's a good thing to augment it.
And I think it's difficult too, because, everybody's busy.
Yeah.
And the question might be asked, and it might take a day to get back, and then they're like, well, where's my answer, kind of a thing.
Yeah, it's so hard.
Or it might be buried,
It's
and you
hard
might
to
not find it.
determine a tone, too.
Facebook does look for an immediate answer sometimes.
Yeah.
It does.
It's like, this is a volunteer position, and we all have jobs that
Yes,
are
we all have
demanding as
full-time
well,
jobs, and they do
jobs and
pay.
families and other demands,
All
so
right.
it's.
So that's my pet story. Thank you for answering those questions. Now let's have some real fun. Let's talk taxes.
I thought we were talking football.
No, that's real fun for you. Is our taxes too high in Pottsgrove?
They're high. They're too high all over. And here's the thing, Evan, and I know it's, I'm sure when you interviewed the other folks, that they hammered that home. It's, 20 years ago, Pottsgrove had high taxes.
Mm-hmm.
And 20 years later, they still have high taxes. So what you need to take a look at is, how are you spending your money? Are you renovating 3 schools? Are you increasing teachers by over 10%? Are you increasing support by over 10%? Are you increasing the after-school program for elementary students? Are you bolstering the music program? Are you bolstering the athletic programs? Are you cutting anything? No. So we feel that, yeah, taxes are high, and for the record, we all pay the same taxes. We may not live in as big a houses as other people, but we still pay taxes. The bottom line is that we feel there's a compelling story there of what we're doing with the money. The teachers, in my mind, they're underpaid. We're paying them what we can, and they've worked with us in recent years in a partnership on a contract that, shows our appreciation for them, but also shows their appreciation for the taxpayer. So yeah, the taxes are high, and we would love them to be lower. We didn't create the issues in Harrisburg. We just get dealt cleaning them up, and you living in Pottstown, you know all about that because it's a similar type of district. Those are those curveballs that come at you that try and prevent you from moving forward. And we've prided ourselves on not only getting ourselves fiscally stable again, because remember, when we joined, we had a $2 million deficit and 4 schools that were falling apart. We don't have a deficit anymore. We have money set aside for pension. We have money set aside for capital projects. $26 million worth of capital projects during our 12 years. That's an investment in the community. That's an investment in every child that's going through this district and will go through this district. So, yeah, taxes are high. The irony is, and I'm not sure how this will play with some individuals, is that when we all decided to run for school board, we knew the taxes were high. When we all moved into this district, the taxes were high. We chose to live here because of the community. We do not have a commercial base. It's a bedroom community, always has been, ever since I was running through some of the cornfields that are now Richards Park. It was a bedroom community. and your taxes are going to be higher there. Do we wish the pension situation was better? Yeah. Do we wish the governor was, keeping up his end of the bargain and helping us out with PlanCon? Yeah, but
Looks like it may be 6 years before
yeah,
you get over the Ross reimbursement.
that's where the rubber meets the road. Yeah, we would love to have 0% taxes year in and year out. Who wouldn't? But we're
We did
not
for 3 years and look where
Yeah,
that got
yeah,
us.
we're not going to
Yeah.
cut teachers. We're not going to cut programs, and we're going to invest in our facilities. And we have some of the greenest facilities, not only in the region but in the state now. To go from when we came on the board with mold issues and environmental issues to having a different type of green, some of the greenest schools in the state of Pennsylvania, we're very proud of that. So that's where the tax dollars are going. Do we want the taxes to be lower? Yes, and you've been coming along enough. Scott and I have been through this now 12 times. We don't just approve a budget and we all ride off into the sunset over the summer. We usually beat the administration up to get it as low as you possibly can without impacting education negatively. And that's another thing we hang our hat on. And we feel that we put the district in a financial situation that education isn't impacted, and we can invest $30 million into a renovation project without raising taxes. I would challenge any other district in the Commonwealth to be able to say that.
Do you hear about taxes in aisle 7, guys? At the Giant, is that a question that people ask you, or is it usually something more specific to their situation?
At this time of year, it's taxes. And
Oh,
all
yeah,
that.
yeah.
At the beginning of the school year, it's about school. So.
I work in 2 dental offices right here in town, so. Yeah.
So people are already not happy to be there, so.
Well,
She gets an earful.
I'm sorry, I'm projecting.
I like to think that probably like 90% of my patients actually like me. So, but yeah, that was one of the first things I heard after the Mercury's first article about the proposed renovation. I don't know why we're spending $30 million on band and music when 5 years down the road we're going to have to cut those programs anyways.
How do you answer that?
I said, well, it would be in the board's interest to really try to do our best not to cut those programs. So,
Do they believe you?
well, depends on the age of the patient. Some are a little bit harder to convince than others.
I think perhaps the further you get away from having children
Exactly.
in the system, the less connected you are with all the things it does,
Yes.
the harder it is to write that check every year.
And that is the hard part, because we do have, not only do we have a transient population, we have an aging population on the back end that are on those fixed incomes, and it is difficult. And that's why, we started this process at a 6.5% increase, and then it dropped all the way down to 3.5. Now it's down to 2.9, and we're pushing them to find a way to get it to 2.2 or even lower than that. The easy way out would have been just to say, well, we can get 3.5, and that's where we're going to do it. But we're not doing our jobs as board members if that's what we put through. If it's needed, yes, but it's already evident that we don't need to go to that level to maintain and improve on what we're already doing educationally.
Right. What's the most rewarding thing about being a school board member? Personally, I've said
I can answer that right personally.
Yes.
I've had the privilege of addressing the senior class for I don't know how many years, and is to shake the graduate's hand and give them their diploma. Unquestionably the best rewarding personal experience.
Okay.
And I was able to hand both my daughters their
Ah,
diplomas.
okay. Mrs. Landes?
I would say being at graduation and watching children,
Yeah.
not children, the students at that point graduating, that's, and hearing some of their accomplishments, and really just seeing the kids that are excelling and really enjoying school and becoming involved, and knowing that there are programs out there for each of the kids, should they choose to participate.
Mrs. Cherico, you can't give that answer because you haven't done it yet, so.
Yeah, I am looking forward to, let's hope, sitting on the football field for graduation if the
Yes.
weather is like today, and that'll be awesome. I do enjoy the when the kids perform at the different board meetings or when they get their awards or citations for academics and things like that, because I think this is our future.
Well, I did get to speak at my daughter's graduation, so that would probably be number one. I think the most rewarding thing, though, is actually the interaction with the children. Do you remember this, Scott? I don't know if you remember it. We were interviewed by student council at Lower Pottsgrove when the kids were going through. And they were asking us all these really tough questions about the board, and then at the end...
Unlike a Mercury.
Yeah. And then at the end, they said, "And what's your favorite snack food?" And I said, brownies. I'm a chocoholic. I love brownies. To this day, every time we have a meeting at Lower Pottsgrove Elementary School, there's brownies there. They used to put them on a plate and bring them up to my table because the different kids would make them at their house. So I'd have one and I'd have to eat them all. Of course, I wouldn't want to let them down.
No, that would be horrible.
Yeah, and
then they decided to need the exercise of walking back
so,
to the table.
whether it was that or Dr. Seuss Day reading to the classes and coming in and things like that. I remember you doing an ice cream social with one of the classes one year. Those are the things that don't get publicized, but it was a very long time ago. But those are the things that when you go home after a board meeting, even if it's a tough one, and you can think back to those times and say, you know what, it really is worth it.
Another thing that I really like to do is when one of our teams wins a championship, the board always buys the jackets. And within the last couple of years, it's
A lot of jackets.
documented that our football team has a lot of success.
Have you ever missed a football game?
Only because of a viewing or a wedding.
Okay.
And he tried
Diane's
to move the
husband-
wedding to the football field.
Yes. Diane's husband, Anthony, and I, we go to them all.
Home and away.
But we've through one of the commissioners in Lower Pottsgrove, we've been able to escort the kids back with fire trucks. It's kind of hokey, but the kids love it. The parents love it. It's a gigantic traffic jam in Saratoga all the way up Pleasant View Road, but just to see the looks on the faces when they're hanging out the buses, and then when they shake your hand and say, "Thank you, sir, for the jacket," it's really rewarding.
Okay. Well, I wanted to end on a high note, but I also want to ask if there's anything that you guys want to talk about that I haven't asked you about yet, because I don't want you to leave and go, "Oh, he didn't ask us about this, that, or the other thing." And I really wanted to say something about that. So, is there any closing statements or anything that you want to say about your candidacy or time on the board, or how much you love your mother?
I put that on my Facebook.
All right.
We've been a part of this community a long time.
Mhm.
We've raised our families in this community. A lot of the community knows us. We go to the events, whether it be a concert, a game, just taking a walk on one of the trails. The community knows who we are just because we've been invested in this community for 20-some years. And I would really like to continue to invest in this community. It's where I'm planted. My roots are here. I'm not going anywhere. The only way I'm going somewhere is if my kids relocate. Right now, that's not an option. So it's a wonderful community. I've seen people from the birth of their child to, unfortunately, other events with their children, parents, whatever. It's an amazing community. It's a unique community, but it's a great community.
Okay. That sounds like a good signing off note. Okay.
Go Grove!
Yeah.
Let's see, did we make it?